why I like producing and creating is I like having the power to make spaces for
Oh,
people, and I like having the power to make things for myself, uh, so that I have my own platform. And
yeah.
some of that has that Bender from Futurama, like, I'm gonna start my own thing with, blackjack and hookers, but
Gail, I want to see the thing that you create with blackjack and hookers
there
because
will be
whatever it'll
no
be,
blackjack and hookers.
it'll be a great musical though. I mean,
I by blackjack and hookers, I mean queer burlesque and Settlers of Catan.
There we go, Settlers of Catan and consensual free burlesque.
Yep.
There we queer burlesque. It doesn't necessarily have to be free. In fact, we should pay the performers.
Yes. In
Really,
fact,
if
in fact, we should.
I think
Um.
this is great. Can we have like a casino night where we play like
Yes.
board games and have burlesque performers?
Oh my
I
god.
think this needs to happen now. Frankly, I want to
Okay.
do like board game casino. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Breaking Fast with Saint Sparklebear. I am Saint Sparklebear. Thank you for joining me at my table today. Today, we eat a dish called Pasta Shenanigans and contemplate a sassy universe of creative squirrel brains with Gail Gallagher. Gail Gallagher is a musician, composer, actor, and music teacher. She's also, like me, a chaos muppet. While eating our pasta topped with fresh pesto and summer veggies, we talk about growing up queer and Catholic, the importance of moms on spiritual journeys, learning to love our own and others' eccentricities, and learning the names of our own squirrels. Grab a plate and pull up a chair. It's time to break fast with Saint Sparklebear. As I'm recording the supplemental material for this week's episode, I'm actually dealing with the death of my mom. My mother died on October 20th, Wednesday of this week, and it's a tremendous loss. Beth was one of the most creative, warm, loving, good, and understanding people that I have ever met and that I believe actually ever existed in the world. She was a tremendous mom for all the ways in which she missed protecting me. She was still a tremendous mom. Gail and I talk a lot about her own mother in this particular episode, and we talk a lot about women contributing to women, or just the idea of that when we express ourselves creatively, we have an impact on the communities to which we belong. Because this week I lost my mom, I actually asked Gail for a reading, and Gail said, "Well, why don't you just quote those Ani lyrics that I talk about in the episode?" And so that's what I'm going to do. So the lyrics that led to Gail's epiphania of 2008, which you'll hear about in the episode, the lyrics are this. Ani says, "I'm no heroine, at least not last time I checked. I'm too easy to roll over, I'm too easy to wreck. I just write about what I should have done, I just sing what I wish I could say, and I hope somewhere some woman hears my music and it helps her through her day." So, everybody, as we are listening to our conversation today, think about the ways that you yourself could help someone through their day. What creative ways that you can think of that can help yourself or somebody else just a little bit to get through the day. All right, now on to the conversation.
I'm so glad that I said hello just as you were taking a bite of food. That is like really good hosting right there.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, this is what we signed up for.
It is. It is. It's a podcast about food. Sometimes there will be eating. Occasionally, people will have their mouths full. I guess it's like par for the course, right?
Yeah, get
Yeah.
some. I don't understand ASMR, but that's for you.
I don't know. That might be the opposite of ASMR. We'll see. We'll get. Somebody can tell us.
Anyway.
That's what a wonderful way to start. So Gail Gallagher, tell me what. Well, tell me your name, of course. Although I just said it, and your pronouns, please.
Yes. Hi, I'm Gail Gallagher. My pronouns are she, her on days when I believe. And
You're not a true believer.
I'm female agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a gender. That's a gender. Female agnostic on Tuesdays.
Agnostically female.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's like, I'm not so sure about this, but I'll give it a shot.
All right. I guess that's what we're doing.
I guess that's the default. Well,
anyway, that's a whole other podcast, but
I mean that's partially this podcast too.
That's also this podcast.
That's also this podcast because this podcast it's me basically. It's me in podcast form, which is why we're also eating food because food is yummy.
Yes.
So Gail, anyway, how do we know one another? How do we meet?
Yes, how do we know one another?
How do we know one another, Gail?
That's the question we ask everyone. So, you and I met at a Unitarian Universalist young adult retreat in. I still can't remember if it was. I think it was was it Wisconsin or Michigan? Who's to say?
It was Kalamazoo.
It was Kalamazoo, so that is Michigan.
Yeah.
Right. Great.
Yeah.
And I believe we struck up a conversation about Amanda Palmer, and I was like, "This person's super cool and super rad," and we had an insight.
I thought you were super cool and super rad too.
And then we've grown as friends, and we tend to talk about deep stuff. And there was a point where every time we talked, we'd be like, "We should have a podcast together." And now here we are with our separate podcasts. Because
we both have. Yeah, you do have one, right?
Yeah, I do have one. You're the first guest on my podcast. What?
What a crazy random happenstance.
What a crazy random happenstance. And now we're here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Came up from Kalamazoo, and now we're here.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Gail, you have a podcast. What is your podcast about?
My podcast is called Faith and What Resonates, and it's about the intersection of spirituality and creativity. So spirituality and music, but also theater, and just exploring how we make meaning in the world in ways that are outside of churches, and also how like that interacts with our church life. But
Great.
Yeah, and exploring the nebulous world of the things that resonate.
The nebulous world of resonance. Resonation is not a word, although it could be.
It could be.
It could be, but resonance, yeah. So, and that's actually something that we've connected about as well, because music is deeply spiritual for me. I think there's very few arts that really like put you in touch with the divine quite so immediately as music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're a music teacher, yeah?
Yeah, I'm a music teacher. I'm a composer, all of the things. So yeah.
Excellent.
Performer.
Yeah. So today we are eating Pasta Shenanigans.
Yes. So
tell me.
I will explain.
Yes, please.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'll try to be in guest mode and not host mode. Oh no!
It's hard. It's like I see you struggling. I see you like because we're looking at one another on a camera right now.
Yes.
Because Gail is in Chicago and I'm in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And like I feel this like in the first 5 minutes of our podcast right now. I feel Gail struggling to like, what do I do as guest?
How do I guest?
What is guest?
What is guest?
I answer questions. How we answer questions?
Yeah, no, sorry.
No, it's all part of the human experience. You know, we let's all take a deep breath together. Ready? Or we're just gonna. There we go.
All right. Here we
All
go.
right, here we go again
Here
on
we go
our own
again.
or together, really.
Yes.
So, Gail, my podcast guest,
Yes.
we are making pasta shenanigans. First of all, I love the word shenanigans. It's wonderful. So, second of all, tell me about pasta shenanigans. Particularly, it's like the first iteration of pasta shenanigans.
So Pasta Shenanigans was originally taught to me by my mom when so there was a summer when I was 20. I was
Mhm.
home from college and my mom was like, "I'm going to teach you all the recipes." And she
Sure.
taught me one recipe and some other ones, but this was the main one that I retained.
This was our
And
recipe. Yeah.
what it is it's incredibly simple but wonderful,
Mhm.
and it is a combination of sautéed vegetables over pasta. And the original iteration was onions, tomatoes, zucchini, and summer squash that you get from the farmer's market, and you
Mhm.
saute them up, and then you put them with the pasta, and then there's like cheese and basil, and there's basil and thyme and cheese and things.
Mhm.
um Significantly more cheese than than I currently do. I've grown over time, but also anyway,
We
so
become adults. We get
yeah.
taste change.
So this recipe, it was like my go-to recipe that whole summer. I would walk over to the farmer's market and I would get my veggies, once a
Mhm.
week, and I would make sure to make this once a week. And
Yeah.
then when I went back to college, I continued that tradition at the farmer's market there.
Yep.
And then moving forward, when I moved to Chicago, anytime it was a farmer's market season, I could make pasta shenanigans.
Yeah.
Anytime I moved into a new apartment, it was like an inauguration of a new apartment and now I make pasta shenanigans and I feel like I live here now.
Okay, so
Um,
it's the food that is home for
and
you.
yeah, it's got this home feel to it.
Yeah.
And over time, through various partners, it's shifted and changed. And like people have suggested, like, oh, well, you should saute the onions a little bit more, or try this pesto. One of On my first date with my now husband,
Damn. Sam
he was like,
is a
you
chef.
can make. Yeah, and he's a chef.
Yeah. Okay.
And he's like, that you can make pesto with pistachios. And I was just like,
I
okay.
forgot about that. You told me about that one
Yeah.
time and it blew my mind. It like
Right.
literally actually blew my mind. Why? I don't know. But
Yeah.
pistachios, I used pine nuts today. I
Okay.
went and I sprang the 12.49 for the
Hmm.
tiny little container of pine nuts. Why are they so expensive?
Why are
Do we
pine
know?
nuts expensive? That is the
I
mystery
mean,
of the age.
that's the mystery. And I think probably I'll edit this and there will be some little aside where I come in and say, this is why pine nuts are so expensive.
Okay, everybody, pine nuts. Pine nuts are so expensive because it is so hard to get the nut out of the pine cone. That is why it's so expensive. It is an actual nut that lives inside the spiky bits of a pine cone that you have to just pry out with your bare hands. Well, I'm sure that they have machines for it at this point, but I can just imagine going up, finding a pine tree, getting a pine cone, and just prying it open just so you can save $12.49 from the grocery store. And that is the story of the pine cones.
But
So,
boop 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 boop. Okay.
boop, boop, just like the podcast. um, so, so pasta shenanigans are home. Why do you think that the recipe inspires such a sense of comfort for you?
um, I think it's that I initially learned it from my mom, and it's something that I have, carried, and we didn't do a ton of, like, there was assorted like Christmas cookie recipes and other things
Yeah,
that were written down, but this was like the one ding dang oral tradition moment. So there's
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And also I think it's the groundingness of learning to that I could just get things from the farmer's market and get fresh veggies and make a thing. And it was my first experience of that. And that led to other iterations of other things and just really having like authority over like, of cooking for myself.
So the sense that you can make your own home for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it isn't actually as onerous or as difficult as it might seem.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, there might be shenanigans.
Oh, there's so many shenanigans.
So many shenanigans. Okay. So the title of this disc, Pasta Shenanigans, it reminds me so much of in that initial conversation that you and I first had. The reason, not just because of Who Killed Amanda Palmer, which is, of course, a seminal album.
Mm-hmm.
It is a brilliant piece of art, but there was something in that conversation. I just had to do that shout out because it really is such a good album. But in that conversation, the thing that you said to me just that struck me as a theologian and as a minister, because I was a chaplain at that con. And you were talking to me like I was your chaplain at that moment, and you said something about the universe was being sassy with you. And that just changed my life. I was like, who is this one? And also, because we're both such muppets.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. So the universe being sassy, like, how did you come to understand the universe in that way? Like, let's kind of do like a little investigation back before you said that sentence. What was going on that day that made you feel like the universe was being sassy? Like, tell me a little bit.
Well, my relationship with the universe's sassiness is long and deep.
Yeah.
And there are lots of ways to go with that.
Yes.
And the particular time, I mean, when I said that line to you, I had no idea how deep the rabbit hole goes. But
we never do.
We never do.
Yeah.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
I was raised both Unitarian and Catholic at the same time. This is a bit I do in the intro of my podcast because that's kind of my unique world point or worldview.
Well, I could do an impression of you doing it.
Oh no!
At the same time.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. At the same time. Because I've heard you do it a few times.
Yeah, I'm glad that you are a loyal listener. That's very good. Anyway, and so in that upbringing, there is a certain amount of sitting in contradiction, and part of that contradiction is that so and my mom was like the main person I would talk to about these contradictions. Or about the universe, and we would have many deep conversations about the universe. And sort of as I grew in my 20s, I realized I was more theistic than she was, and so there was always like a point of tension there. And that's a whole other thing. But I'm the sort of person that I do enjoy observing the stories that the universe want to tell. And over time, I've gotten better at like being chill about it. And in my 20s, I had no chill.
I think
I continued to have no chill, but
I don't have a lot of chill either, but definitely in our 20s, everybody in their 20s has zero chill. It's a very difficult time. You're learning how to be human. Mm-hmm. What is the what?
I know.
How do we and there you are just tossed into it. And they're like, you're an adult now. Go have a job.
Oh, yeah. Or at college where it's like, hi, we're going to take a bunch of babies because 19, you're still kind of a baby. And we're going to have them live together with new people when they have unprocessed stuff from like living with their family of origin that they now have to figure out how to do living with other people.
Yeah. Yeah,
and people think this is a normal thing and don't address that there might be shenanigans.
Indeed, and not just in the pasta. So
Yeah.
okay, so your
Anyway,
mom.
so my mom.
So your mom is the person who, it seems like your mom is kind of like this central figure for you,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of your spiritual journey, or your longing for spiritual connection.
Yeah.
And is there, because she was an atheist, is that right?
Yeah, atheist with the more I sort of like look at her stuff, okay, can I tell you something spooky?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so although she was very atheist, she did have some like well, first of all, I do know that she was interested in some like Buddhist stuff, and I think she was just a little bit more Zen leaning, but we never unpacked that.
Mm.
But when I
Mhm.
was going through her car, so I inherited her car after she passed,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
in the back of the car, you know, in the junk where you keep like the spare and the whatnot, there was this
Mhm.
giant piece of paper from what appeared to be some sort of adult RE class. And on the
Ooh.
giant piece of paper, it said creativity equals God.
Oh,
So I'm like, so mom at some point attended a class
yes.
about the nature of God and put that in
Yes.
the trunk. And
Mhm.
when I opened the trunk, this giant piece of paper that said creativity is God was just hanging out there. And I don't know. And also we've had other magical moments. Like part of my journey has, and I wrote a whole album about it.
Yeah.
But part of my journey, which we can get into, but part of my journey
Sure.
has been there sort of finding the inner voice of wisdom that sounds an awful lot like my mom, but is in fact me. And then sometimes
Mhm.
being like, oh, but no, that was straight up her.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What?
Yeah.
So what was your, like? Why was your mother such a strong, influential spiritual figure for you? Like,
I think it's the wisdom and the wit, and I think it's the fact that we could talk about the deep stuff, and that
Mhm.
that she was always open to it. And
That's not always true of parents.
except when she wasn't, which there was some moments where which I'm not going to tell the whole grand story, but the summer that I started that I was like at home, learned the Pasta Shenanigans recipe, all of these things.
Mhm.
I went through, and we can unpack this more, but I went through
Sure.
a big old spiritual epiphany moment where I didn't sleep for days, and I was home during that time,
Oh,
and I was
wow.
rambling to my mom about
Oh.
stuff, and my mom was just like, you need to sleep. And then I thought that was
Yeah.
validating, because I was like, I'm connected with God, and she's like, you need to sleep.
Yeah, we get real connected with God after not sleeping for a few days.
Yes, and now as a grown up, I'm like, no, you needed to sleep. Like,
You needed to sleep. It's like brains; they do things when you deprive them of the things that the brains need.
right?
But why?
But
Why?
why?
Yeah, let's unpack this. Okay, so how did you? What was the first night like? How did this start?
Okay, here it
Start?
goes. So, how this started is, so the summer of 2008, which was a trying flippin' time. The universe was being real sassy. The universe did not come to play, it came to slay.
It did not come to play. It came to slay.
And that summer, I had worked on the Into the Woods musical at the community theater. And there was some weird drama within the play it was really funny to happen during Into the Woods, which is a whole other thing. And also there was like a major flood in Waterloo, and also there was, and in through the rest of Iowa, and also like there was like a big tornado at the beginning of the season, just like a few towns over. And then and so while we were doing Into the Woods, the musical about those moments where stuff hits the
like
fan.
giants can be good, witches can be right.
and then there was a tragedy at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee, where a
That's
man
right. That was
went
that
into
year.
yeah. So the
Yeah.
the
So in
story
2008,
yeah. You go.
like, which one of us is the host? Which one's going to do the thing? I'll describe it. In
Okay.
2008, there was a gunman who went into a Unitarian Universalist church. Weren't they doing Annie?
Yeah, they were doing Annie.
They were doing a performance of Annie, and a gunman came in because the Unitarians are very lefty, and so the gunman was the antithesis of that, and came in and shot a bunch of people, and killed a couple people, and then he was tackled by an old guy, as I recall. And it was really, I remember as a Unitarian Universalist minister at the time that was terrifying, because I was like, great, okay, now we got the right wing nut jobs like coming after the UUs,
Yeah.
who the UUs can be left wing nut jobs. But that's neither here nor there. It doesn't mean they get shot. So anyway, but yeah, so that was happening that year. So there was a lot going on for you.
Yeah.
And was there like what was happening for you spiritually? Like what was going on in your heart?
So, my takeaway from that moment, part of this is that I then went to a young adult conference at a church in Kansas City right after that event happened.
Yeah.
And I went to the church service the next morning, sleep deprived because it was a young adult con, and the sermon was kind of disturbing in that context. It was a sort of a standing on the side of love kind of thing, where it was like, we will answer this with love, and we won't be afraid. But it was a little on the nose. They had a girl singing "The Sun Will Come Up Tomorrow,"
Oh,
and looking back, I think that triggered something in me, because it was I got this really inspired, Unitarian born again moment of I want to, I want to be a force for good in the world. And
yeah.
underneath that feeling of I want to be a force for good in the world was an unacknowledged, I just realized that mortality is a thing. And
So what's the
yeah.
correlation between doing and being good, or rather doing good? I don't think being good is, you be good by doing good. So what is the correlation for you between doing good and your own and others' mortality?
I think in that time it felt like I needed to change the world and save the world. It was like big,
Right.
save the world energy that happened because I felt threatened. And
Do you still think you can save the world?
Not by myself, I'm not.
But there is a time. No, but I think that there is a time though with us folks who have the do-goodness in our hearts, where there can be those moments where we really do believe that we can save the world, right?
Yeah. And yes, absolutely. And
that causes us to stay up for 3 days.
Yes. So let me we're going to go slightly down the rabbit hole. So I came back from that con, and I think I journaled, and I watched Across the Universe, and I felt a lot of feelings, but was still getting enough sleep, but was still feeling that call. And then I was driving out to Nebraska to take my first load of stuff out to my apartment for the year, because I went to college in Nebraska. So I was taking my stuff out for college. And I was going to go see some Nebraska rep plays and see some friends. And in the middle of I-80, whilst listening to Ani DeFranco.
Okay. Which one? What song?
So the line that got me was, I just write what I should have done. I just sing what I wish I could say. And I hope somewhere some woman hears my music and it gets her through her day.
Yeah.
And lo, in that moment, I felt a good, a big old spiritual aha moment, and I did not know how to place it, and I didn't know what to call it, and I think because I didn't have the language to label such things. I was
Mhm.
like, Jesus? Like, I was like, I interpreted it as like a ministerial call because someone was
Gail,
on the phone.
Gail.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you just named something really deep there. I think like so many of us, well, so many people don't really have language for their spiritual feelings, right?
Yeah.
And so when we have spiritual feelings, which a lot of people will name that as Jesus, or will name it as something that they don't actually believe in, but that they don't have other words for that feeling. That
Mm-hmm.
that's the words that they have, and I can hear that in that moment. And you said you felt a calling to ministry at that point too.
Yeah, because I didn't know what I assumed in my little you raised by an atheist brain that if you have any sense of God at all, it must mean you're special. Because and you should be a minister.
There's nobody, the UUs, they don't feel God. The only ones who feel God are the ministers. Everybody else, they talk about it a lot, but they don't really feel it. We're discouraged, honestly.
I was 19, okay? Like,
No. And this is like, oh my God, Gail, this is such a valid 19-year-old epiphany. This is the kind of epiphany that I had at 19 that led me into seminary. I'm glad you didn't do that. So, but what did, okay, so you're in your car, you're listening to Ani DeFranco, and you have an epiphany related to music and how it speaks to people, or what was the
yes, I think the initial message and the initial thing I got was I want to write things that inspire people and that I can inspire people and that I want to do things through my art. And also, and I think that was the initial menace. It was a lot of I thought a lot of things. And I think what my brain was trying to say is, my dude, you're a theater major right now, but you really, 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 really miss music and you should do music. Why aren't you doing music?
Oh, you weren't doing music.
I wasn't. I was doing music on the side. Okay, so I was improvising all through college. I would go find pianos and make up music, and that was like my way to process.
Sure.
And I did do some musicals in school and this, that, and the other thing, but I was not a musical theater major. You have to like sacrifice a chicken and be pretty or whatever the fuck to be a musical theater
major. Be really pretty. I couldn't be a musical theater major either because I was not.
And be incredibly talented, and also there are more systems to that, and I'm not at all bitter about being a female in the theater world at all, and that's anyway, no, I'm not at all bitter, but anyway,
you can have a little bit. Bitterness is, it's
I'm
part
bitter.
It's just one of the flavors. It's one of the flavors of life. If we're talking the food podcast,
one of the
right?
32 flavors of life.
One of the 32 flavors of shenanigans. And
yes. Oh man. I
tying it back to the Ani.
Oh yeah. And anyway, so that was a thing, and my mind just kind of kept racing from there, and I couldn't really pinpoint it. And then I saw my friends, and I wouldn't shut the fuck up, and then I slept on a strange mattress, and then I couldn't sleep on the strange mattress, and then I didn't sleep for several days, and then I was processing everything, and then by the time I got my ass back to Waterloo, I was just a mess, and my mom didn't know what to do with me. And I was staying up till 4 a.m. trying to make peace movements on Facebook and DMing all the famous people that I like. And
wow, you were deep in there.
It was real bad.
Yeah.
And
who did you DM? Who did you DM at the time?
Like, God, Susan Egan, who is like my Broadway idol, which I DM'd her before. I think I emailed the band Pain of Salvation. And I DM'd a couple people that were friends. God, it was a lot. It's embarrassing. It was a lot. And then I had to pack up for college, and I couldn't like get myself to pack. And my friend Geneva had to like help me through it, and she was just like, okay, like everyone was like, okay, what the hell?
Yeah.
And like at one point my grandma came over and my mom's like, don't talk about angels in front of your grandma. It's going to freak her out.
Wait, you were
Uh,
talking about angels.
I don't know. Or
You
don't talk
don't
about this
know?
stuff. I don't think I was talking about angels. I think I was talking about the
No.
muse. It was a lot about the muse. It
The
was the muse.
muse.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. Tell me more about this muse.
The muse had a lot of fucking ideas and I couldn't sleep. That's what
Oh,
happened.
so the muse was like keeping you awake.
The muse was keeping me awake. Yeah.
It was the muse's fault. Did the muse have any kind of embodiment, or did you like was the muse a form at all, or just internal?
It was internal. It was a lot of well, it was interesting because
Yeah,
it was both a big old stream of consciousness thing,
sure.
and it was a lot of like ideas and like creative inspiration and scenes and things like that. The thing about my brain is that when it has epiphanias or whatever you want to
Yes.
call them, panic attacks, whatever, it just comes up with ideas. And because I am
Yeah.
both an event planner creative and
Yeah.
a songwriter creative,
Yeah.
uh, it just doesn't. It's like, okay, well, here's how I'm gonna make an internet forum to make world peace or whatever. I don't like.
Because sometimes you
Yeah,
just kind of do that, right? So, but there
yeah,
is, I mean, okay, like let's talk a little bit about your
yeah,
art, and what you're doing,
yeah.
because you said something very smart there. That is that your art is partially event planning as much as it is artistic expression.
Uh huh.
And that's something that I've noticed about your art is that it you tend to be part of and create events,
Mm-hmm.
places where people can gather, community happenings,
Yeah.
right? So, like, tell me a little bit about is how do you do that? Where does that come from, and why?
Yeah. Well, yes, and thank you for taking me out of that rabbit hole. So that's a little bit
Yeah, no
about what
problem.
that rabbit hole looks like.
That's a big old rabbit hole, and like honestly, like it's so interesting that so many creative people have these experiences where they achieve altered states of consciousness in varieties of ways, be it through lack of sleep,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. We do not treat our bodies very well necessarily, but that it leads to interesting experiences that influence the things that we create or why we create. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, no,
yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, going back to event planning. So
yeah.
I will say that that was the thing that one of the things that I learned in college is that I liked producing shows. I liked
Yeah.
facilitating shows. I studied both theater performance and theater management.
Uh-huh.
And I think I was drawn towards creating events because when I did not have space, when there wasn't a space for me, I went off and I made my own space. When I
Uh-huh.
didn't get cast in the main stage or student productions, I was like, peace out. I'm dyeing my hair red and I'm gonna go hang out with these Rocky Horror people for a semester. Like that
Yeah.
was the kind of person I was in college.
Right.
And I think this does tie back to like the acting thing
Yeah.
because I felt like I did not have the looks for the characters that I wanted to play
Mm.
because I have a very like childlike look and I'm short, and when you're competing with people who are tall and blonde and beautiful and wonderful people, and
Yeah.
but when you're competing with like models for like lead roles
Yeah.
and all this other stuff, it can get really catty. And like some of that is 100% all in my head, and some of that is like I've been on the other side of the directing table, and now I'm like, okay, cool. Like I see that this is hard. There's an inside joke in the theater world that like there was a meme that went out that was like, uh, a girl's like, I worked really hard and studied and went to like 5 summer camps, and I'm so proud to be woman number 3. And then a boy is like, the theater teacher cornered me after lunch, and now I'm playing Shrek, you know.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I felt I why I like producing and creating is I like having the power to make spaces for
Oh.
people, and I like having the power to make things for myself, uh, so that I have my own platform. And
Yeah.
some of that has that bender from Futurama, like, I'm gonna start my own thing with, blackjack and hookers, but
Gail, I want to see the thing that you create with blackjack and hookers.
there
Because
will be
whatever
no
it'll be,
blackjack and hookers.
it'll be a great musical though. I mean,
I by blackjack and hookers, I mean queer burlesque and Settlers of Catan.
There we go. Settlers of Catan and consensual free burlesque.
Yep.
There we queer burlesque. It doesn't necessarily have to be free. In fact, we should pay the performers.
Yes,
really.
in fact, we should.
I think this is great. Can we have like a casino night where we play like board games and have burlesque performers?
Oh my god!
I think this needs to happen now. Frankly, I want to do like board game casino. Okay, I'm sorry.
Anyway.
This is a total distraction.
So anyway, that's my answer to your question, is that I event planning and facilitating is also a valid art that I enjoy.
Well, you mentioned the creation of space, and there is such a sacred resonance to that, to the idea of creating space and the idea of having space for people who don't necessarily have spaces otherwise. Welcoming people or creating a space that is welcoming. So is that, to you, is this event planning aspect, the community aspect, is it a spiritual calling for you to do this?
I think it's one of many. I think it's an element of what I do with my art, as well as, like hosting shows or creating, like when I perform, what I love about performing is creating that space in the moment, and having that openness and that vulnerability, and doing podcasts, and like, having we're getting meta here, but doing podcasts and being able to give people to have these open conversations and share things with each other that way. And there's different ways of creating space. That has been the thing in the pandemic, has been realizing there are new ways to create space. Like, we're not in the room together, but I was able to like do concerts with people who are all over, and I love that.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Actually, let's talk about the one concert that we did together, that we've done together for a few years, which is the Jesus Christ Superstar Do-It-Yourself Messiah Complex. Which is it's like this amazing, speaking of burlesque performers and board games, it's pretty much that minus the board games. But we do the entire album of Jesus Christ Superstar from start to finish, and different performers of different styles, they perform different parts of the song. So but you were involved with this kind of like from the beginning. So tell me about your love of Jesus Christ Superstar, and why is it for you such an important kind of community musical?
So Jesus Christ Superstar was the first musical that I did, like when I was like 13, and I worked backstage for it. It was also, and it's hilarious because like I was also altar serving at the time, and then my role as a prostitute was basically altar server.
You were altar serving you were an acolyte both places.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm gonna try not to tell all of the stories that we told on my show, but
and it's okay if we do. Yeah.
I don't know, like that's how we roll. It's canon now. Anyway, so my mom. My mom was really into Jesus Christ Superstar, and that was her preferred gospel, was the gospel of Andrew Lloyd Webber. And so that was how we connected. That is how I connected with my atheist mother about Jesus. And then when DIY JCS started, I just thought it was the coolest concept. And the first time we were there, it was bring your own bread and wine. And it was just this very beautiful performance. And it was also like my grandpa Gallagher passed like the day of that, like the night before the performance of
Oh, wow.
DIY Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So you were in quite the place when we did that performance that first
Yep. Yep. When we did that performance that first time, like I drank lots of wine and ate lots of bread and
time.
and
Because what else I mean, like when somebody dies, what do? You eat bread and you drink.
yeah, exactly.
I mean,
And
yeah.
in the memory. And it was when Rose did their sermon about the one of those like we're all stardust kind of things that
Yeah.
that was like when it hit me was
Yeah.
that, and it was just this incredibly cathartic moment. And it was also like, cool, I'm honoring my very Catholic grandpa while in this very like queer but Jesus-y space,
Yeah.
and I'm here for it.
Queer
Yeah.
sacred Jesus.
Well, and that's also a thing, because part of my journey with the Catholic versus UUism, how that
Yeah.
panned out, dear listener, is that I was in
Uh,
high school and we had a priest who was going on tangents about how gay people were going to hell, and meanwhile at the Unitarian Church we had a lesbian theology professor who would preach sometimes, who had a pamphlet that priest really should have checked out. And also, I was realizing my bi-ness, and I was just like, it was a lot. So I refused to get confirmed. And that is, I refused to get confirmed. It was like my dad and I had a whole thing about it. And I think part of that
wow.
was that he wanted to, like, he wanted that for me because of, it was important to my grandparents. And my grandpa and I did have a few conversations about my grandpa at one point did say, "Well, I hope you find out that the Catholic Church is right." And I'm
Oh,
like, "Well, my dude, I read a lot of Richard Rohr. It's fine.
yeah.
We're
Yeah.
here. We're here living our lives."
My
Like,
goodness. Oh my goodness. Do you miss the Catholic Church though? Do you miss the
um,
ritual?
I I have a soft spot for the ritual. I will
Yeah.
attend. I will go with my dad occasionally. And I've had some spooky moments where
Yeah.
it was right after my grandma Gallagher passed, and I was doing a performance for some nuns in South Dakota, as one does. And so I was in South
Sure.
Dakota with a
Doing a
theater
performance
company,
for some nuns.
and we went to mass that morning before doing the performance.
What
And
were you performing for the nuns?
so I wasn't performing at the mass. We were performing in their like community space later.
Right.
But the show was it's called Strong Women. It's poetry by by women at Cook County Jail. It's part of the program, the
Oh.
company that I interned with when I first moved to Chicago. Because also the more coherent thing that came out of the Great Epiphania was that I wanted to do theater and social justice work. Like when we put all the buttons back together, it was like, do theater and social justice work.
And we're going on so many tangents right
I know.
now.
I'm sorry.
Oh
It's
my
gonna come
gosh.
back.
Okay. Oh, totally. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, great. So anyway, so I was with this company doing theater and social justice
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And we were there to do this play, and we went to mass that morning, and I went up and I got communion, and I felt this deep sense of my grandma's presence.
Oh,
And that's happened a couple
lovely.
times. So like if that's what
Yeah.
communion gonna do for me, like, and I feel my
Okay.
grandpa's presence when I get communion. So if communion's like you get a little tap on the shoulder, like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, because I mean, you're sharing the body of Christ with the body of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So you're that would include the body of Christ of our ancestors, the ghosts of the body,
Yeah.
the ghosts of the body of Jesus. But like, I would assume that that's part of the transubstantiation of the whole business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how that works, right?
Oh, how about that? Yeah, but it is very difficult, I think, as a queer person who's raised Catholic, because there's something that's very satisfying and queer about the Catholic ritual. It is an intensely embodied ritual, really, and hits on all sorts of points about how the body is the community and the community is the body, and the it's yeah, just a tremendously embodied ritual that talks a lot about the interdependence of bodies upon one another, right? So, um, so is that to you like there's a tradition of in Catholicism of social justice theater, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and is that kind of what got you into that, or were you into that for a different reason?
So by the time I started to focus more on like social justice theater in the back half
Yeah,
of college,
yeah,
I had already done the vagina monologues a few times, and I was already sort of like on the periphery of that, but that I did focus my energy towards that, and that was sort of how I did the math of that initial calling moment once things
yeah,
settled down was
right.
to get into social justice theater, and part of that was the sense of community and going back to
Mm,
the thought about shared spaces, like and
yeah,
and creating space.
yeah.
um Thank you, listeners, for going on all these adventures with us.
We
We Anyway, so I did
did
when
we
I worked.
mention that we're chaos muppets? We're chaos muppets.
We're
So this
okay.
is
You know what? Just tell them in the intro. It's fine.
yeah, we're both chaos muppets, and this is bound to happen. So
Yeah.
there we go.
We
Voila.
both have squirrel brains that like to go on adventures, and when we're together, it's a journey for everyone.
This is
Um
actually what happens when we talk together for real, though.
I
Yeah,
know.
it's the same thing. We just kind of like go, oh, there's this part and this part and this part, and then they all come together, and it's like, oh, how did we do that? Anyway, so you go talk now.
Anyway, I talk now. I do the words now. Um
You'll be
so
guest.
I be guest.
Yes.
Uh so I have
Yeah.
done work with theater and writing workshops in prisons with incarcerated women, and
Mm,
uh, one of the most striking things about those moments is you can be sitting around a table and like sharing your writing and sharing your work, and there's a moment where you're like laughing about something, and like you forget the fact that you are in a prison, and
mm,
those were some of like the coolest moments.
yeah.
And yeah, and also it's hard. I like doing prison ministry work, like, is I'm glad that
Mm,
I've had the experience to do it. I don't have the
yeah.
bandwidth to do it as much as I used to, and or
Hmm.
I mean, I'll do like letter writing with Black and Pink around holiday season. That's an organization that reaches out
What's
to
black and pink?
Black and Pink reaches out to incarcerated LGBTQ peoples and
Hmm.
HIV positive peoples, and
Yes.
creates pen pal programs and stuff with them.
Yes. Do you have a pen pal?
I don't have a pen pal. That is
Uh,
something I might look into as I feel called. But yeah,
by the way, dear listener, we would both recommend that you. I'll include it in the show notes.
yeah.
We'll include the website for Black and Pink. It's a really amazing organization, started by queer people for queer people, and yeah, you should check it out and give them money. So, but so yeah, okay. So you're working with incarcerated women, and you um, that there's something about doing that work that feeds your spirit.
Yeah, and at the times when I did that, it was definitely super powerful. Um,
Sure.
yeah.
Now, as a white person, was that you are a white person? Yes.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
how did how did how did white privilege come into play in those situations, or did it?
I will say that as I've become more aware of my white privilege, I have sort of like when I was first in it, I don't think I was like
Yeah.
aware of the nuances of that. And then when
Sure.
I've done two prison theater programs. I did Still
Yeah.
Point, and then years later, I did a bit of Story Catchers Theater, which works with at risk youth, and both in
Right.
facility and out, and they had a ton of training as far as like awareness and stuff like that. And so, and
Because you
that,
were working primarily with people of color, right? Like
yeah, primarily
that's
people of
not
color. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
right? Because
Um,
that's our prison systems are filled
yeah.
just
Yeah.
it's just obvious that it's a rigged system and it's racist.
Oh yeah,
So
and I've
and that's
talked
part
to
of it. Yeah.
people in the theater program, one of
Mhm.
the theater programs with at the prisons, so people who are in there for longer, so they've been sentenced and stuff. There was a woman that I talked to who was like my age, who was in for 40 because she was in a car, uh,
Wow.
when something happened. Like
Yeah.
she was just in the
What?
wrong
She was
place at the
in
wrong.
the car?
She was in the car when somebody
Wow.
shot somebody, and she was in for 40 because she was in the car.
Oh
That's
my
what she told me.
goodness.
And we don't normally
Okay.
ask people what they're in for. Like that's like etiquette when you do
Yeah.
these things. If they divulge it,
Well, yeah, because they're people.
yeah.
Like, can you imagine meet somebody and they come up to you and they're like, "Tell me the worst thing that you have ever done," and that's
Hmm.
like the first thing that somebody asks you when they meet you. That is literally what happens when you ask a prisoner, ask
Yeah,
somebody who's in jail, "What are you there for?"
absolutely.
Same question. Like,
Yeah.
tell me the worst thing, the thing you feel most ashamed of.
And that pisses me off when like people at like make like ask like, oh well, what was that person in the for? It's like we don't know unless they tell us, unless they
Right?
divulge it and they feel like they want to
Yeah.
open up about it.
Yeah, because it's a sensitive, that's a personal topic, man.
Hmm.
If ever there was one.
Yeah.
So you were there and you were doing this, and we're talking a little bit about the white privilege piece.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, so how did that play a role for you? Or you said that there were things that you were kind of oblivious to.
Um, I think when I initially started doing theater and social justice work, I think it came from a a good intention place, but I think there's a little bit of like I can not I don't think my I was really aware of my whiteness and my awkwardness within that
So
at
there
as
was
much.
like kind of that white savior complex thing happening.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And I will say, so the other so I've worked with incarcerated women. I've also spent a lot more time working with adults with developmental disabilities and mental illness as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
and that's
Yeah.
like more of the population that I've worked with, and with that, I mean, there's race and things are also. I mean, it's a very intricate cluster of a system. And
How does okay? So you come in with music to
mhm.
to meet with these people. What is music going to do? What is music going to do, Gail? Tell me.
Oh, well, the workshops that I was doing with incarcerated folks, there was a writing element to it.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it
But what about
was
but particularly with the folks with mental illnesses or developmental delays? Like, why is it that you're giving them a musical experience? Like, why is that important?
because there's a connection that happens that sort of, I mean, it sounds woo, but
Hmm.
there's a connection that happens that can that is like deep and like communicates things in different ways that you don't always like it yeah, like it's there's this cool visceral thing that happens. And
Mm.
I did the choir there
Mm.
at Newman. When I worked at Newman Family Services, I did the choir and I did the open
Yeah.
mic night. And at the open mic night, I did. Oh, and I ran the talent show too,
Oh my God, the
which
open mic night and that must have been phenomenal. I'm so
yes,
tell
yes.
me.
Oh my God.
Can you
So
share just like a couple acts?
oh my gosh. So, well, here's the thing about about open mic night, which is essentially
Yeah,
karaoke.
for sure.
Every Friday, I hosted karaoke in my room, and people were really particular about their songs,
Oh,
and they would like they and if more than one person wanted to sing the same song, it was a thing, and like you had to like set hard lines. That was like, okay, nope, this is who's going. This is
Yeah.
what's happening.
Yeah.
And there were and it was just it was so joyful and so wonderful, and also a lot when it's like people are just handing you CDs at all throughout your day for the talent show. So I ran the talent show and I had to organize everybody's lists, and there was a individual we were in rehearsal, and there was an individual who got upset by routines, and I tripped over a plug and while he was performing, and I had to like be like, no, it's okay, I'm sorry. like there's a lot of moving factors to manage, but
Yeah.
it was always so joyful and so wonderful and so cool, and it was always a good party in my room. Now there were also times when an individual who was having a behavior, which is a euphemism for losing their shit, would come into
So the person was up in their bullshit.
there was somebody up in their bullshit, and they
Yeah.
came into my classroom and with the staff that was trying to get them down from their bullshit, and then
Yeah.
they like tore apart my classroom while my little
no.
old man who's like who is relatively high functioning and just likes to do stand-up comedy just stands at the front and continues doing his stand-up comedy while the other guy just tears up the room, and I'm just sitting here
Wow.
going,
That's beautiful. That's some like postmodernist performance art right there. They need to join together and do that as an act.
except
Like,
not in my classroom where things
not
are
in my
apart.
classroom. Yeah, buddy.
And here's the thing though, like
Yeah.
I was a baby. I mean, I was like 23 to 25 when I did that, 26.
Oh,
And
babe.
24, 27, I don't know, time is an illusion. But when
Yeah.
I was working at that job, I think that was before I was aware of my own boundaries, my own sense of grief, my own sense of my own neurodivergence, because there'd be squirrels in this brain. I don't know what they are, but there are squirrels in this brain.
They have names. Do the squirrels have names?
No.
Oh, okay.
I think their names are ADHD. But
Arthur, Dennis, Harold, and David.
Yes. Harold and
Arthur,
David.
Dennis, Harold, and David.
Yes, Arthur,
squirrels
Dennis,
in your
Harold, and
brain.
David. They why are they all men? I have to fix that.
You know, I don't make the rules. I blame the patriarchy. That's all I'm
Okay, great.
saying.
Anyway, so I was unaware of my own like neurodivergence, my ability
Yes.
to set boundaries while I was working with much neurodivergence and very boundaries. And so like
Much divergence, wow, boundaries.
yes.
Yeah.
And I eventually left that job.
Because you have to. I did a job very similar in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And I also had to leave the job because I myself was a little mentally ill kiddo who didn't quite have anything in order yet. So yeah, like when you're young and you do that, it's like it's all idealistic, and you're like, I'm going to change the world and make people happy, and then you're like, this is terrible, and I'm traumatized. I can go home now.
Yeah, going back to the creating space thing, it's like
Yeah.
it's there's a journey that you go on where it's like all you can do is give people the mic. Like you can
Oh.
give people the mic, you can give them the room, you can
Yeah.
create the welcoming environment and just see what happens. But like to have any expectation of like, and then their hearts are gonna be changed by song. Like maybe a little, but no, not immediately.
So this is interesting. So we were talking earlier. I'm noticing a through line here. We were talking earlier about musical theater and the that access to performing in musical theater is often barred for a variety of reasons that have like if you're not stereotypically beautiful, or you don't look a certain way, it's difficult to get into that field, have access to the mic, right? And so it's interesting that then like what you would do as a youngin is you would go to people who have even less access to the mic than you would, and you give them a mic. So yeah, I like, what is it about giving people mics? Why is that important for you?
That's a great question. Um, it just makes sense. It just makes sense to give people mics. I don't think I ever thought
Right.
about like these people shouldn't have mics. It was just like I have a job. I'm going to give to give these people mics, and now we're going to give them mics because we
Well,
can.
well, these are
Like,
people who I mean, like specifically when we're talking about people who are very much who are institutionally mentally ill or
mhm,
developmentally delayed to the point that they have to be in an institutional setting. These are people who don't really have a lot of voice, right?
mhm.
Where we're talking about women who are incarcerated. These are people whose voices have been definitely taken away and they don't have a lot of freedoms for themselves. Um, and so there's something like for me, there's something about you offering space that translates also into freedom or into liberation in a way. You're
Sweet.
blinking.
Yeah.
That's just, yeah, right. You're doing some sweet liberative work there, just handing weirdos mics and being a weirdo with a mic.
And recognizing and learning to love the own weirdo with a mic that I am because
Mm.
because that
Mm.
is also part of the journey
Right.
is and that the I as much as I make fun of and that the epiphomania of 2008 is that
Sure.
I it took me a really long time to just recognize that and like to get my ass to therapy and actually like validate myself of what happened and like all of that. Like I just
Right. Like, yeah, to
like
radically accept.
to
Yeah.
radically accept that part of my humanity and to recognize the fact that I was scared and had brain
Mm.
squirrels I didn't know how to deal with and did not sleep and like and did not have the proper structures, and I am happy that I got through that time and then I learned from it and grew from it, but I was
Yeah.
embarrassed and
Yeah.
like thinking like uh and 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 really embarrassed by my own eccentricity. And I think
Huh.
part of the journey of I mean, now I work with kids and it's just like, oh man, we're all humans learning how to be human. But
Speaking of eccentric,
yeah. Speaking of
kids are
eccentric,
weird.
kids are weird. They're still there's a meme that's like it's like introducing aliens to human customs. It's like, well, on your planet, you might think that doing yoga poses on a chair is how we sit, but that is not how we sit on this planet. um
Yet on this planet, we do
yeah,
it this way. Yeah.
but
Mhm.
part of the journey, and although I'm less in the community servicey elements of things, and I'm
Yeah.
yeah, part of that journey of the past few years has been learning to love my own love and accept my own eccentricities as I work
Mhm.
with other people, and it has improved patience with myself and with other people.
Yeah, it does do that, doesn't it? Like the more that we learn to radically accept and love ourselves, the more that we have the access to those kind of realms of love and realms of acceptance and compassion, you
Yeah.
know? Huh. Yeah. Wow. Man. And so you're not doing like direct community service work, but do you still is there still an element of liberation in the work that you're doing?
I think so. I think that um a lot of so in my teaching I am very much into figuring out what my what makes my students' brains work and what connects with them
The names of
um
their squirrels.
and yes, the name learning the names of their squirrels and um
There's an
I
element.
yes, element of liberation. Yes, there is an element of
Yes.
liberation both in my teaching and in my songwriting. I strive to like I mean I have my genre if left up to its own devices is if Amanda Palmer and Joni Mitchell wrote a musical together. But also,
Okay.
I like to draw from other genres, and sort of my goal as a songwriter
Yeah.
is to learn the rules of different genres so I can break them in interesting ways.
Ah,
So I don't believe in gatekeeping in my songwriting either.
yeah. Right. You believe, yeah, having like everybody should be welcome and everybody should be able to create.
Yeah.
So yeah, including you. Do you have a favorite song that you've written?
Oh, that is a tough question.
I'm asking you to love a baby more than others, so you
Uh,
don't necessarily have to.
well, let's talk a little bit about 222 because it connects
222.
222. So
Okay, tell me.
222 is it is track number 11 on my album.
Ooh.
Yes, I did that double digit repeating digits. Uh and it is about angel numbers, and and why I want to talk about this song is that the
Yeah.
chorus so the chorus is 222, the angels are with you. I don't believe in angels, but I believe in you. And the
Oh.
thing is, and it's all about, like, every verse is the character going around and seeing and working through whatever dark night of the soul they're going through, and seeing 222 in different places.
Mm.
And and the chorus is, the line, I don't believe in angels, but I believe in you.
Mhm.
It kind of shifts over time. So the whole song is told in that second person. And it
Mm.
sometimes I think of it as me singing to past me. And sometimes I think
Mhm.
of it as, like, from the context of my mom. And
Mhm.
this idea that, like, I like the idea of, I don't believe in angels, but I believe in you, like saying, like, you feel guided but you don't believe in
Yeah.
angels, but you feel something
Right.
guided. um
Yeah.
but I also like the idea of, if it was sung from, like, the context of my mom as an angel, but then being like, now I don't believe in angels.
I love that idea of your mother, like your mother, out in the cloud of ancestors, being like, "Listen here, kiddo. I don't know this angel thing, but you're okay.
Yeah,
Keep
like,
going."
I don't
I
believe in
love
this,
that.
but I'm here.
But here I am doing it.
And that
Kind
song
of.
and that track was just really magical to record, and there were, I think, multiple ancestors present for the recording. And
Yeah.
there's, like, a ethereal awe in the background that's very cool. The angels are with you. Now I don't believe in angels, but I believe in you. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So, what is at this point in your life? We've talked a little bit about how you were raised Catholic and Unitarian, and you had your epiphania, and you have had mystical experiences, and so on and so forth. Um, what is what is God for you now, and is it important for what you do day in and day out?
So, God for me, I think, first and foremost, is the creative process.
Mm,
And but not just the creative process, I think it's also um the the still small voice, and the voice
mhm,
of, like, inner wisdom.
mm,
um
mhm.
like, I think, business God. So, like, going through your day, um uh I just
Mr.
came up with
Jim Business, Mr. Jim Business God. Yeah.
yeah, so there's Jim Business God, and then there's, like, the creative process god. But
Yeah.
no, but just going through your day to day, that sort of voice is like a is the like inner wisdom and the sort of like
Yeah.
everything's gonna be okay. And I attribute that mostly to like my own wisdom, because I don't
Mm,
like attributing it to an external force, but I do feel like it's connected to a unit. Like I don't want to
mm,
connect that voice like that was part of the discoveries, was realizing that for me it is more sane and grounding to say like this is me. It's just, but there's something that my tendrils are attaching to. um
right.
so in the day to
Well,
day, yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. Go
in
ahead.
the
No,
day to
you do
day,
yours.
it's the inner GPS. It's the inner
Okay.
GPS. It's just the voice that's like, turn here. Okay, let's do
Okay.
this. Let's clean up our room a little bit. Let's do, it's an inner parent. Um
Yeah.
and then in the creative process, it's similar, but it's focused on problem solving, and it's more of being drawn towards a particular thing. And
Mm, mhm,
um yeah, and sort of drawing towards whatever lights me up. And also those moments, it's also those chills when a show starts, or when it's which is sometimes attributed to like a mystical experience or something like that.
mhm,
Like there's
mhm.
sometimes when a show gives you chills, and there's sometimes when a show gives you chills because it reminds you of a particular person.
Yeah.
So yeah, God is
Yeah.
catharsis. God is the voice that tells you to clean your room. God's a lot of things.
Catharsis is the voice that tells you to clean your room. It's a tornado. It's the globe itself. It's the universe,
Yeah.
and it also tells you to clean your room.
Yes, it
So
does.
that's
In the nice calm way where it's like, I recognize and accept your chaoticness, and also let's go ahead and throw this out right now.
right. Like, I love you so much, and we need to clean.
Yeah.
Let's do that for a second. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay, so that's yeah, yeah. I can see that. So the inner divinity, or the inner sort of the inner guide. That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's
Cool.
just me momming myself, essentially. Like that's my inner guide.
I mean, I think that might be true for people's experience in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
In terms of, particularly, like it's embodied as a parent so often. God is so. Yeah, that makes some sense to me. So, Gail, what's next for you? What are you creating? What are you doing? What's going on with Gail?
So I have my podcast, Faith in What Resonates, and that's
Yes.
going out on the same feed as yours. And so
Hey,
that's
we're
where
on the
you can
same.
find me. And then right now, I am doing some life stuff. I'm focusing on upping my production skills and
Mhm.
building. I'll be releasing some more songs and stuff too, but I'm also
Cool.
um hoping to do more producing work and all sorts of
Yeah.
good stuff. But yeah,
Do you want to write more podcast themes?
I write podcast themes. I wrote this
You wrote
podcast
my
theme.
podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this podcast theme is really good because, like, okay, so the influences that I gave you, Tom Waits' Time.
Mhm.
It was This Tornado Loves You by Nico Case, I think, and
I'd have
then
to look it up.
Love Throws a Line. I know it was definitely Tom Waits and Patty Griffin.
You
And
told
you,
me if flowers picked up a saxophone.
if Flowers smoked Marlboro Reds and played the saxophone, that's what I want my podcast theme to sound like. It's like Rusty Flowers, and you did it. You gave me some rust belt lilies, and I really appreciate it. So yeah, Gail, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast and making Pasta Shenanigans.
Yeah.
Is there any last words that you have for our beautiful audience that is still listening?
I just love all the places that this conversation went, and it was so good for us to connect on that. And I love like having this opportunity to be vulnerable and explore these things. Also, if y'all want to find me places, I'm
Yes,
yes. I'm
I want
hosting
to find you
again.
places. Okay,
Yes.
good.
Okay, great. I'm Sparkle Bard Gail. So not Sparkle Bear, but
Not
Sparkle
Sparkle Bear,
Bard.
but we both sparkle.
We both
Sparkle
sparkle.
Bar.
That's why this
Yeah, we did.
conversation has gone the places it has. But yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But Sparkle Bard Gail. Also, my website's
Yep.
gailgallaghermusic.com. I have an album
Yes,
out called Power of the Unnamed
you do.
Passion. It's a ride.
Yes, and one of the songs is based on a tarot reading that I gave you, actually.
That's after the album came out. But I also have a song called Tarot Song that is based off a tarot reading that Aiden gave me. Yes.
Yes, because I think that might be, someday we'll have like tarot readings featured on the podcast. We'll see what happens. So
that'd be cool.
I know, right? Anyway, Gail, it has been wonderful spending time with you. Thank you for chaotically muppeting with me.
Anytime.
Thank you again for joining me at my table today. It has been a heck of a week for me, but I'm really grateful that you were able to come and share a meal with me. You can reach Gail Gallagher on the web at gailgallaghermusic.com or find her on Instagram at SparkleBard. That is B-A-R-D, SparkleBard on Instagram. This here podcast is produced by the New Faith New Media Network. You can find them on Facebook or on Patreon, where you can subscribe, where you can find out more. You can also subscribe to the New Faith New Media Network, and you'll get this podcast as well as many others, which are quality podcasts. You should do that. My name is Saint Sparklebear. You can find me at saintsparklebear.com. Thanks again for coming to my table. I hope that you've had a hearty and nutritious meal, and I'll talk to you soon.